Okay, okay. So I figured we'd go over all of the add-ons, perks of both the killer and the survivor. Killer being the Trickster, survivor being Yun-Jin. So just make a quick little overview on all the stuff so we know what we're looking forward to. So let's start with perks. Three perks that are coming in from the Trickster. We have No Way Out. So each time you hook a unique survivor, you get a token. So same thing as barbecue and chili, right? You get a token for when you hook up. For every survivor you hook, increases the time that the exit gate switches can't be touched when the end game starts for 10 seconds each. So the value in that is, getting Gen Rush or something like that if you have a insta down killer. You might be able to score some kills. Technically, this pairs very well with Noed. Makes for a really good end game build. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Noed, but end game builds can be fun if you build around them. So you get Blood Warden, you get No Way Out, you get No One Escapes Death, and then another perk that deals with the end game that I can't remember off the top of my head, but you get what I'm getting at. So basically, you can block, because once the last gen is done, right now it activates, so you get that time to smack them around. 40 seconds is not crazy long, but long enough for you to hopefully get it down, wait for that to, the gates to be open, and then activate Blood Warden potentially. So it's a good end game build. The value that I see in it being, able to stop survivors when the game ends. I guess there's a world where you kill one survivor, there's only three of them in that 40 seconds, you can down a second one, get altruistic. You might be able to save a game from No Way Out, but I'm not a huge fan of perks that have no value until the game's over. So to each their own. However, maybe some end game builds can get a little bit stronger and allow you to snowball in those last little bit. Starstruck. So this is what happens when you carry a survivor. Not when you pick up, which is what I read this initially. I thought this perk was way worse than what it is. So um, excuse me. When you are carrying a survivor, survivors within your terror radius suffer from the exposed status effect for 30 seconds. So I thought initially it was when they pick them up, and I'm like, well, by the time you get them on the hook, it's 15 seconds gone, so you're going to have 15 seconds to knock somebody down. There's no chance. But carrying a survivor, this has a lot of interesting applications that I think are niche. I don't think that this is going to be a main perk by any stretch of the imagination, except for potentially nurses, and I'll explain why in a second. Because when you are carrying a survivor, anytime terror radius hits somebody, they get exposed, right? So if you're familiar with infectious fright, the plagues perk, right? You get to hear anybody within your terror radius that screams after you get the down. And so what you could do is you could potentially pick somebody up, apply that exposed effect, and it stays on them until you either hook them or you drop them. And then you're able to commit to that chase right after. And so you get the intel, and then you have 30 seconds from when you hook them, or if you decide to drop them, to be able to apply that exposed effect. Then obviously 90-second cooldown. That's just so that you can't juggle. Pick somebody up, drop them. Have the exposed effect, pick them up, drop them. That's just not compelling gameplay. So I like the cooldown on it. I wish it was 40 seconds instead of 30. I think that would take it to like an actual proper perk that could be utilized. But the reason being is nurses obviously can gather or traverse a lot of ground really quickly and be able to get past terrain. If you're a proper looping, you're not in a dead zone. 30 seconds just isn't that long. Like you should be able to maintain that. It means half the time of a haunted grounds, right? So still, I think that there is something to be said where if you get infectious fright, you know where survivors are, you pick them up, you immediately drop them, and you go. So it's a high risk, high reward kind of gameplay. Worst case scenario is that this immediately removes body blocking, which is why I think it's in the game. You get each killer for one of the major problems in the game seem to have a perk or a power that addresses that problem right now. Obviously, body blocking and hook bombing are pretty prevalent with moderately coordinated teams. So Starstruck just makes so that they have to scatter, right? Which some killers want, some killers don't, and I think it's a cool way to play around some of those strategies and styles, and I think this will see use on some killers particularly. Hex crowd control. It is a reverse bamboozle. So, if a survivor performs a rushed vault, which for rushed it's either a medium or a fast vault, right? Slow vaults do not work through this. It blocks the window for 14 seconds. And so, cool concept. 14 seconds is just long enough for I think it to be relevant. I just don't like that it's a hex. I don't like that this can be removed. The impact that it has in the game is going to be relevant for how long you can use it, and I don't know how this holds against the other hex perks. You run Devour Hope, and if they don't find it, that has way more impact than this, crowd control. You have Ruin, it has more impact. Heck, Retribution, which allows you to at least see them when it's broken, inevitably, always draws value. Where this, like blocking a window for 14 seconds, I'm thinking about the windows, your Killer Shacks, your LTs, like those have value, but all you have to do is, as long as you have a pallet, you'll never ever get to somebody in 14 seconds, and then they just run that again, and then push that even farther. And so I'm really intrigued on how this is going to work. I don't see it being useful. It's cool. There's another hex in the game. I think hex totems are an interesting enough mechanic to play around. I wish that there was a downside to this when it was broken. Like the entity blocks the window for 14 seconds. This persists for 60 seconds after the hex is down, right? Just something, just so that if it were broken, it would impact the game in a way that actually made survivors have to adjust the way they play for a small period of time. Because just blocking it for 14 seconds, you run Bamboozle and you get guaranteed value for the entire game, and Bamboozle already is, it's a good perk against, looping survivors. If you run into those, but this just does the same thing, and I think it does it worse. So, a bummer. So, anyway, those are the perks. I should have gone over his power. I played a game, loaded up the video just so that I could learn what it does, so I could talk a little bit more about it. So, Showstopper, you start with 60 blades, and it is just like the Huntress. There's a wind-up time, but there is no, you don't wind up longer to make it do more or less. Once the wind-up time is completed, you can start throwing. And the only way I can describe it is, imagine if you were throwing, spitballs is what it looks like. Like, they have a trajectory, they have motion, but they're pretty straight. Like, they're pretty easy to aim, but they're very small. Hitting a survivor with one far away would be difficult. Even like 25 yards and beyond is pretty unlikely, unless you probably wouldn't be doing that unless you are like getting the last hit with the blades. So here's how the blades work. 60 blades, you're like, whoa, 2 blades knock them down, that seems pretty OP. So it builds up a meter. So that's what this little middle bit here is called, the laceration meter. And what the laceration meter is it is a build-up. So think of like a reverse, oh god, I'm struggling. The borrowed time effect, right? The Legion effect. You basically get some bars around your survivor head, and you can see as they fill up each time you get hit by a blade. And so it looks like standard, I didn't count, but it looks like 8 or 9 blades drops you a health state. So you can become injured and you can become downed. So that is convenient. It's not like the plague where you fill it up and then you can't assault them unless you have the red goopy goop, or if you hit them with your weapon. This one you can down and injure with this. By filling up that meter. So it is very, very useful when survivors are trapped in animation. So through windows, obviously, but more importantly, and what I had found playing my last game, is when people are going for saves or for blocks. And so he really punishes people who try to body block or push anything forward that's not, putting on a generator and not running away, pressing W, pressing forward on your controller. So that laceration meter is what dictates whether or not you're going to knock them down. Now the kicker is you can't, ghost faces where you 99 everybody, and then, when you want to, you pull the trigger and stalk them for that last little bit so you get the guaranteed hit. If you build up the laceration meter and, the survivor is able to get away, when they haven't been hit. So you can start smacking them, and if they can hold you for 30 more seconds in a chase, you'll have to hit them with a couple more blades because they'll lose some of that laceration that happens to them, and especially if they can get away. So you can't stock, laceration to one blade on everybody and then just go, ching-ching-ching and knock them all down. You have to be consistent with it or else it will decrease. And there are add-ons that we'll go over in a minute that affect that. And then main event. So this is what confused me. So when you start hitting people, your power will get a little red bar around it, just like the Oni when you're collecting blood. And I was really curious what it did. Well, it essentially makes it so that when you're running around, the more hits that you get, it fills up. And when you fill it up completely, you no longer have a number of blades. You can throw out as many. So, you can start machine gunning. But why that's so important is your movement is not slowed while you're moving. So as soon as you fill up that thing, you just start hawking blades like it's going out of style, trying to hit the survivors, however close or far away you are. Because, you get about 12 to 15 seconds ish of just unlimited, raining the pain down. So really cool that there's multiple layers to his power, and it makes it interesting, I think, in the sense of how you play him, because he moves as slow as the Huntress. He's 4.4 meters per second. So you're not going to be getting on top of people easily. That's definitely not how you want to be playing him. You want to be playing via the ranged, ability, but you can store up main event. So unlike the laceration meter, you can actually get it prepped and primed, close some of that distance, or if you're facing more than one survivor, you have some choices to make while you're playing to utilize that time effectively. Because if you can get one or two survivors in medium range and you can proc main event, or if you have all 60 blades, you are going to down both of them. You can create so much pressure so quickly when you're using those. And so I really think it's cool that they have multiple layers. You have to hit them multiple times. You can get, pseudo healed by not getting hit by them. So there's counterplay in the sense of, if you don't get hit constantly, or you don't put yourself in a bad place, if you're looping around buildings and getting that distance from them. It's not like the Huntress where she gets a hatchet, your next hatchet you're down. You can really play around what he's doing. But at the same time, the killer can choose when he wants to kind of dig deep and start really putting the pressure on when he procs that main event. You kind of control how that works. So you could get, one or two hits off melee wise if you have it close up, and then pop it and then knock him down instantly. Just there's choice and there's layers to his ability, and I think that's appreciated, because it's not just get close, don't get looped, use your ranged ability. And so I think it's pretty dope. Lastly, let's go over his add-ons. They either affect how many blades he carries, how those blades affect people, or the laceration. There's a couple that have some unique effects. And we will just go over them right now. So, first of all, Trick Pouch. You just carry 10 more blades, you start with 10 more. So you do start with 60. And also you refresh it, just like the Huntress, you refresh your blades inside the locker. It's kind of fun to watch it. He grabs them all in a cool little smooth animation. Trick Pouch allows you to carry 10 extra blades. Memento blades, this is your traditional, killer gets more blood points to sacrifice some of their power. It increases each laceration meter, meaning that it takes more blades to drop them. So you would only be taking this if you're blood point farming, or if you want to, increase the difficulty for whatever reason. Slightly increases movement speed while throwing blades. So you actually gain movement speed back. So I think you go from 4.4 to 4 meters per second when you're throwing. And so you're trying to get back to that base level 4.4. This increases the duration of main event being the thing that allows you to throw them infinitely, and you don't slow down when you're throwing them. This moderately increases that. This slightly increases the time before laceration meter starts decaying. Just gives you more time to actually hit them. Slightly increases laceration part duration when out of blades. So if you run, you got to go refresh in the locker and you're in a chase, the laceration meter decay will be indicative of that. If you had one blade, this add-on doesn't do anything. Once you're at 0 blades and you need to reload, this has an effect. This is slightly increases the initial throw rate of blades. So this is just the windup, and it allows you to get into that faster, which is super useful. Increases movement speed while throwing blades. So again, getting you closer to the 4.4 while you're running, which just kind of matches what you're supposed to be doing in main event. And one thing that I don't know is that if these combined, let's see, what was the other one, right? Do these, so when you're in main event and you press the ability button, it says that your movement does not slow on the throw state. Do these stack on? So because you go to 4.4 meters, right? You go to your initial 4.4 meters per second. I'm curious to know if, having these stacked on, you would go up to 4.6. So you'd actually run the fastest during main event. You actually go faster. Interesting. Moderately decreases each survivor's laceration meter. So this just makes it the laceration goes down really slow. Considerably increases. So these ones are obviously slightly. Considerably is a big jump because it's not moderately. Considerably is, I want to say it's like 10-ish%. I don't remember how it reads out. Moderately increases time before laceration meter starts decaying, right? So if you throw this on and you throw this on, right, you run out of blades. Laceration is basically not going to drop down at all, which could be convenient. Moderately increasing the throw rate. I think that these are probably the two most useful perks, like if you're going to run your average setup, because the throw rate is what's going to stall you from knocking down survivors, because they're going to be running around corners and trying to break line of sight, and the faster you can get back into hitting them, the most important. Bloody Boa, 15 more blades, so you could potentially get 25 blades, so you could be at 85 in the game if you really wanted to have, if blades is just the #1 way to play him. That's also an option. These are where it gets kind of cool. So his very rare perks, I think, are way even cooler than his ultra rares. But so trick blades allow you to ricochet your blades off the environment, dealing an extra 100% laceration. So again, and it's going to be indicative of the map and where you're at. But if you could somehow throw the blades ahead of them and ricochet it backwards towards them, or off of a box, off of like you're getting looped, this might be super useful. And basically, one blade counts for 2 for every time you hit them. So if you get talented, or if there are certain maps that really benefit this kind of playstyle, you can be knocking people down like mad because you're freaking Beyblading them off the walls, which is pretty sweet. The other one that applies to this, which I think is super super cool, by the way, these two counter each other because this one breaks the blade. So blades shatter when hitting the environment, dealing half of the normal damage to nearby survivors. Here's the kicker. Again, if you're running near walls, survivors are hugging their environment. Who cares if you throw double the blade? You get guaranteed hits every time, and it could potentially accelerate the way you down survivors. So no idea. I've never played with either of them, but I just think that's cool, right? Bouncing off, breaking, it changed the way the killers played, and I love perks to do that. Diamond Cufflinks, when you one blade hit away from maximum, reveal their aura for 6 seconds. This is 2 parts, right? Revealing their aura for 6 seconds is good because you can aim at them right if they're trying to dodge run around a wall, mind game. You get a little wall hack for 6 seconds. But what's more important is as you're running, and this may become less important as people learn how to read their laceration meter or count how many blades they're doing, but you actually could line up while you're chasing them, so you know exactly when to hit them and line up fall or further lacerations. So basically, when you're going to put them in injured state, you're going to put them in the dying state, and so that information may be good enough to utilize kind of information. I think this gets less and less useful the more comfortable people get with the Trickster, because you just know how many blades have hit. Like, you'll get the feel, your muscle memory. But it's cool that you can reveal their aura for 6 seconds as well. So you get 2 parts in that. One is when they're about to go into the next state, because their aura will be readable for 6 seconds, and then obviously the readability. So cut through. This is the other one. So this one allows blades to go through people, and this is where I think you might be able to get something fun. So if you, blades pierce through survivors, and then you can ricochet. If you have 1 or 2 survivors or just a couple people, you get an interesting loop. You're bouncing things off walls, and then they're also piercing through survivors. So if they hit the survivor, then it goes through the wall. I imagine it's going to ricochet, and so you're going to get this cool little, double play of where the blades go, and basically, literally, just be a machine gun. Like, you're just and they're bouncing off the walls, hitting everybody. So, like I said, I like the 3 of these because they change the way the killer plays, because it changes how his power interacts, and then this one is just, probably useful for the start. I highly doubt this will be exceptionally useful beyond, starting to play with people, but potentially I'm wrong. Maybe having people high laceration and then, tacking on, moderately increase the time before laceration meter starts decaying. You kind of keep tabs on people and start breaking them down that way, I guess. Iridescent photo card, lastly. So your laceration meter will no longer down people. Instead, it gives them the exposed status effect. I'm not sure how I feel about this one because you're a slower killer. So all this does is you basically can hit people. Once you get that laceration meter full, they have the exposed status effect. Now that would be cool if the laceration meter never went down, but the kicker is the second that it starts going down, they're no longer exposed. So for me, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, or maybe when people play with it, they'll find that it's OP, but the issue that I have with it is that the second that laceration heals and they're no longer one blade hit away, you can't down them immediately, and the only way to get them back is to start throwing blades, which creates more distance, and then you're 4.4 meters, like you're running at the Huntress. That'd be like running the Huntress with no ed, with no speed increase. Like, yeah, sure, you're dangerous for a little bit, but all you have to do is create distance. Someone needs to body block. Like, there's so much counterplay to this kind of style, and it just immediately handicaps what you're going to be trying to do on the ranged. It requires you to get up in the melee. And, I mean, just like the Huntress, just like any ranged killer, being able to close that distance is all you're meant to do. And this literally is like, hey, close the distance yourself. And also there's, the downside is you can't use your range to be able to down people, which I just, not a fan. I think this is what's the word? It's a bait, right? Like the Hags ultra rares make her worse objectively than they make her better. So I feel like this is in that same thing, but it offers a different way to play the killer, which is cool. And then this right here is actually pretty cool. I like this one. So basically, laceration by the blade is based on proximity. So the farther you are, the worse damage they do. The closer you are, the more they do. So this one has a lot of potential, because if you can get close enough to Survivor that you don't miss, because that's the issue. That's the downside, is that if you miss, it resets it back, so you're doing 50% of normal damage. But and I'm not a huge fan of the each blade hit increases the laceration caused by blades to a maximum 200%. My guess is that it goes up 25 or 50% of the time. I hope it's 50%, because if you do the math on it, let's assume that it's 8 blades to knock down a Survivor, or 10. If you run this, sure, it gets up to 200%, and if you're an absolute, first-person shooter machine, and you hit everything, and there's multiple survivors, then yeah, this has immense value. But here's the kicker, right? Each time you hit a blade, that laceration drops, or every time you miss it, right? And so how many blades are you removing from the equation by getting up to 200%, right? It's half, so you'd only need 4 in that analogy versus 8. But once the blade misses, right, it resets to its initial value. The other side of it is that can you increase it if you don't miss, and then you start up a ranged hit animation later. So for instance, let's say that I down one survivor, I hit them every time, I never missed a single blade, calculated it perfectly. Could I take that into my next chase, right? Because if that's the possibility, then it's very high risk, and then medium reward, because you're downing them a little bit sooner. So I like this one. I think this one's cool. I think there's a skill cap for the Trickster, where if you get really good, this can become super deadly. I feel like it's fair in the sense that as long as you, the survivor, can make him miss, it becomes worse. So there's counterplay to it, and so it's where you can affect people in a way that actually makes it feel meaningful. But anyway, that is the Trickster. The full offerings and everything breakdown. Let's go look over our dear friend Yun-Jin Lee. So Yun-Jin, she brings 3 new perks, 4 new perks actually. One is you get to look fabulous. So I mean, take that for what it is. I have no idea they probably have a lot of fun cosmetics and things they can go through for it, but obviously you get a very, very strong, K-pop fashion show look about you. So I mean, she's gonna be really visible. You start off, if you want to be a taunter the killer and look really good, you get to start off with a good default skin. I'm sure there'll be fun ones to go. All right, so we have fast track. I have them in the wrong order. We'll go in alphabetical. So fast track. Whenever another survivor's hooked, you gain 3 tokens. Okay. Every time that you use a great skill check, you consume a token and grant 1% bonus progression for generating or for repairing a generator. So for instance, there is a world where you saved everybody, everyone's been hooked 6 times, and everyone's still alive, right? You could potentially have 18 tokens, right? And if you're the last survivor, for whatever reason you're not looking for the hatch, then you would technically have 3 times 9, 3 times 9, which is 27 tokens. So realistically, though, 18 is the highest you would get, and you're banking it up. You're not hitting great skill checks for whatever reason, and you go to a generator. That's 20% of a generator. You just saved 16 seconds off of one generator. I don't know if that's worth it, right? It just seems pretty low impact for what you get from it, because you're already getting a 1% bonus progression for hitting the skill check itself. So gaining an extra 3 for every time someone is hooked, it's a marginal increase, and potentially there's tournament players as well as teams that are just going nuts with brand new parts. You might run 4 of these, and every time a killer gets a hook, that's knocking off 8 seconds off of generators across the map. That's a lot of time saved potentially when working on them. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's impactful enough. I think it's cool in concept, and maybe there's some builds that would utilize it a lot better. I'm just not, feeling it. Maybe there'll be a build where there's a perk that's based on tokens that you have, or as long as you have a token, then that would be cool. Because then this would be, you could hang on to that and basically never just hit a great skill check, but be able to, activate your perk via that thing. But as of right now, not a huge fan. Self-preservation. Whenever another survivor within 12 meters of you gets hit by a basic attack or a special attack, so that means mouse button 1 or mouse button 2, your scratch marks are hidden for 10 seconds. So this can be good if you are trying to hide from the killer. Obviously, being able to keep your scratch marks hidden is always a bonus. when you're trying to evade a killer and he's giving chase or is around you looking for you, because then you could just be hauling your booty and they just have no indication that you're there, right? Because I mean, they might hear your footsteps, but those are betraying half the time and leaving no scratch marks. So 10 seconds is a long time. You get a lot of distance. However, I see this being potential or having potential in the breakout build. So breakout, for those that don't remember, is from Yun-Jin. It's the one that makes so people can wiggle faster, and they have less wiggle time when they're trying to get away from a killer. So you just basically run around them and then try to distract the killer and basically utilize that time to get them off the killer, right? To waste that hit and down and make them go after him again. So this could be useful because a survivor gets downed, right? Gets hit by basic attack. So your 10 seconds already starts. You're not going to get a full 10 seconds, but they immediately pick them up afterwards. So 1.5 second melee attack cooldown timer. Then you get about 8.5 seconds where you are running with them with the increased haste and movement speed, and there are no scratch marks. So you're able to keep close enough to the killer to affect breakout, but not for him to know that you're there. And so there's definitely some cool plays that can be made to where you can utilize that time before you have to take a hit, get in front of them, etc. So self-preservation, again, a very low impact perk, but say lovey. So also, by the way, fast track is on a bunch of skulls. She fast tracked her way into the business, and then that's a killer with a hatchet, but that's not the huntress. The huntress is the only character with a hatchet that I know of. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. The art, it's very telling. And then smash hit. This is actually the one perk that I think is actually really cool. It's a totally different play style. When your rival makes a mistake, sees the opportunity after stunning the killer with a pallet, break into a sprint at 150% for 3 seconds. So you get sprint burst when you stun a killer. So obviously, I'm a big fan because I like to mess with killers and then create space, and cause all sorts of issues. So this is potential. Right now, the meta, or at least a strong part of the meta, is sorry, I lost my train of thought. Well, the strong part of the meta right now is, trying to finish those chases as soon as possible. And a lot of killers, are not respecting pallets because it's a waste of time to do so, right? Most, you give an inch to the survivor, they're going to take more time than just, having the pallet break down and then, moving around. So what this does is it allows you to have, some more mind game to the killer, because the killers who get punished for being stunned are less likely to want to get stunned. Like, it's already pretty punishing, don't get me wrong. Like, stunning a killer is a big deal, but if you run Enduring and Spirit Fury, like, you're able to eliminate that pretty easily. So running Smash Hit just means that you have to make a conscious decision that, hey, if I'm going to let them stun me, they may get away. Because, I mean, 150%, including the stun duration, like, you wasted so much time of their chase. If they continue to commit to you, right, you're not going to be able to get it again because of the exhausted effect. You're going to be running. It's not going to go away. But you've just so much potential to get away with Smash Hit, right? Like, being able to just run and, create that distance. So I just like it because I like exhaustion perks. I like having more options than just dead hard. Even though I think Dead Hard is still infinitely better, even Head On I think is infinitely better than this, because you're in control of the opportunity, not necessarily the killer making a mistake by letting you stun them. But I like the fact that you can play this way because it allows you to play that aggro, interact with the game outside of generators to be able to benefit your team and reward you for it, the more than just blood points and creating that space and time. So do I think this is better than Dead Hard? No, because it's not as consistent. However, this allows you to have an exhaustion perk that can maintain chases across instant down killers like Bubba, Hillbilly, and insert other killers that can insta down you. Because Dead Hard obviously only affects you when you're injured, but this can obviously be utilized against killers that, if they're never going to let you get injured, Ghostface, etc. So those are the 3 perks for Yun-Jin, and that is the patch. There's no new map, unfortunately. There were a couple fixes. Wraith got faster in his cloak, but he moves slower when he uncloaks. So, I don't necessarily. I think they nerfed the Wraith again. by accident, but life goes on, and that's it. So we'll chat with you guys later. Enjoy.